Good evening, everyone. In honor of the new year, we're starting a cycle, God willing, to record some classes in the Alter Rebbe's magnum opus of Torah Ohr. This week is Parshas Noach, and one of the most famous Mayim, beloved Mayim, Rabbim. It's a pasuk taken from Shir Hashirim, chapter 8, verse 7. And I have the Mamloyas here. And we're going to introduce the Alter Rebbe's mimer with the analysis of the Mamloyas on the pasuk. So we'll translate the pasuk and we'll read the commentary, and then we'll go into the mimer. L'chaim livracha. Mayim Rabbim lo yuchlu lechavis es ha'ava. When a haris leish tefua, imitin ishes kol hein beise be'ava, boiz yavoizu loy. Many waters cannot extinguish the love, and rivers cannot subdue it, wash it away. If a man would give all the wealth of his home for the love, they would utterly scorn him. So the Mamloyas says, according to the Targum, God is addressing the Jewish people. Many waters cannot extinguish the love. If all the nations would come together like one immense mass of many waters, they would be unable to extinguish the love within you. If all the kings of the earth would rush together like surging rivers of great power, they would be unable to obliterate you from the world. If a man would give all his wealth of his home for the love that you bear me, remember this is Hashem to the Jewish people, you would utterly scorn him, scorn that man, scorn the man's wealth. Then again, there's a reference to the Torah. If a man would spend all the wealth of his house and go into exile to study Torah, I will return to him a double measure in the world to come. All the booty that will be taken from the camp of Magog will belong to him. Some perceive an allusion to Haman's evil design to annihilate the Jewish people. The poet celebrates the failure of his plan. Many waters cannot extinguish the love. Who is this a reference to? That if they would form together against us into one immense nation, like a giant body of water, they will not be able to extinguish that love. If they would separate us into many rivers, they will not be able to wash it away. And if that man, who's im yitein ish es kol hein beisai, who's that man? And if Haman would willingly give all the wealth of his home to the man Mordechai, he would utterly scorn him. Mordechai's love for Hashem would utterly scorn all the wealth of Haman's home. As was said, your handful came and outweighed my 10,000, from Esther. So this is a little glimpse of how the Mamloyas interprets the pasuk. There's much more, but we'll get into the Mayim. So the Alter Rebbe says, Mayim Rabbim lo yuchlu lechavis es ha'ava, uneharis leishtafua, imitein ishes kol hein beise be'ava, voiz yavoizu loy, hine Mayim Rabbim. What are these many waters? Heim kol tirdes ha'parnasa. He says they are analogous to the anxiety of making a living, financial troubles, and the thoughts that preoccupy man's mind in this world, etc. Notwithstanding the anxieties and frustrations of financial issues, nonetheless, these troubles are not able to extinguish the natural, organic love of the Jewish soul. That this is the hidden, innate love of the Jew. Which is contained within every soul of every Jew. Beteva, naturally. Stemming from the godly soul. That her nature, the nature of the godly soul, is to constantly rise and become subsumed within the godly light up above. Like a flame that ascends on its own. As the pasuk prior to this pasuk says, that her coals are fiery flames of love. Her coals are aflamed of a godly flame. What is this analogy of a flame? Is that just like a flame is sparked from its wick and is constantly ascending upwards. This is analogous to the godly soul. That prior to its descent and enclothing to a physical body, it was basking within the radiance of the Shekhinah. It was digesting and understanding God's presence, of how it's sheichen, Hashem's energy is creating and recreating creation at every moment. This is the clarity and the transparency that the neshama, the godly soul, was experiencing up above. And it was in utmost unity and intimacy with the infinite light of Hashem. And therefore, and afterwards, meaning once it plummets into being enclosed in a physical body, to now occupy itself with physical matters, that these physical matters and these financial restrictions that encumber the soul and the body of the person so much, we call them Mayim Rabbim, the many waters. Im kol zeh, nevertheless, lo yuchlu lechavosah, the fiery flame of the soul is so impassioned, is so fierce, that it cannot be washed away, it cannot be quelled by the many waters that are hovering over it. Being that the nature of the soul is to be in a constant state of love and yearning, with a wondrous, bewildering level of love, to ascend and become included within its source up above. The Adarab, and on the contrary, specifically through the soul descending into a body, and the body having to be preoccupied with the many waters of financial constraints and issues and anxieties. Nevertheless, specifically through this preoccupation anal, we are able to ascend to an even greater level, to an even greater level than where we were, than what we were basking in prior to the descent of the soul in this world. Which means to say, the mechanism to truly have a relationship with the most profound, intimate state of godliness is specifically coming into this world and dealing with the anxieties of making a living. And that itself eclipses the powerful light and radiance that the neshama was basking in prior to its descent to this world. V'hinei, v'chines mayim rabim hanal, the aforementioned rapid waters that are attempting to subdue the fire of our soul, we call them nikra mei Noach. They're called the waters of Noach. And this is a reference to Yeshaya, chapter Nundalid, in which I promise, I swore on behalf of the waters of Noach, that they will, which have come to the earth. So too I've sworn from becoming angry with you and being upset at you. So why are we called? So if the waters of Noach are this flood, is this flood that is seemingly negative, not good, nevertheless it has an intimation to the exact opposite of the flood-like state of anxiety and the issues of Parnasa, because kihine Noach hu naiche derucha. The word Noach, Mei Noach, literally means the waters of Noach, but they can also mean the waters of tranquility, the waters of serenity. Naiche derucha, a tranquil spirit, a spirit of tranquility, shehu b'chinas shvisa, which is represented by the rest and the cessation of labor, like a person who ceases from his labor. So too, when the waters are abated, and again, the parable for the waters is the anxieties of Parnasa. Once we're able to excavate the pnimius, the deeper dimension of why we were giving these troubles in the first place, they can now become Mei Noach, not only the waters of Noach, but waters in which cause tranquility in our life. Like we have the terminology in Parshas Bereshis regarding Shabbos, and Hashem rested on the seventh day. And Targum Unklutz explains, V'noach, or V'nach b'yom hashvi'ah achuli. The terminology for Shabbos, Vayishbais, and Hashem rested, the Aramaic translation of the word Shabbos is v'noyach, v'nach. And he rested, which means, and tranquility was induced into creation on the seventh day. So we see that there's a similarity or a corollary between Shabbos and Noach and the idea of Naiche Derucha, tranquility, serenity, and the ceasing of labor, which is experienced through Shabbos. So in essence, we're saying Mei Noach are not only the waters of tranquility, they're the waters of Shabbos. Like Shabbos is the cessation of labor and the relaxation that you're able to get from releasing yourself from the boundaries of the weekday. So too, the Mei Noach, there's something that comes about as a result of having to go through the anxiety and the troubles of making a living that will result in a tranquility and a serenity. And this is intimated in why the terminology of the pasuk says Noach twice. Why is it Noach? Why does it say that Hashem says Noach twice? Is a reference to how Noach's presence was brought tranquility to the higher realms and tranquility to the lower realms. It's a serenity to the higher realms and a serenity to the lower realms. This serenity is not only a arbitrary serenity, rather it's a reference to Shabbos Tatov Shabbos Ilah, that within one Shabbos there exist two dimensions and experiences that the soul experiences on Shabbos. One is called the Friday night, the lower level of Shabbos, where there's a reason or a rationale for why you're relaxing is because I just went through a hard work week. And Shabbos Ilah is Shabbos day, which is a higher dimension, that this is not a ceasing from labor, but an entering into a new dimension of rest. And this is hinted to in the words Noach, when it repeats the name Noach twice, it's a reference to these two dimensions experienced on every single Shabbos. The Alter Rebbe says it's a reference to a lower level of Shabbos, is the way we experience Shabbos prior to Mashiach's arrival. And there's a tranquility, but there's still a rationale to the tranquility, and it's because of something, which is not the case by the higher dimension of Shabbos, which we are referencing to the Geula, that the whole entire Geula is called Shabbos. It's called the higher dimension of Shabbos, which every single day will be on that level, which is not the case now, that not every day is an experience of Shabbos. The Gemara says that if the Jewish people keep Shabbos, 2 Shabbosim, right? That's how we'll bring redemption. So it's not necessarily 2 weeks of Shabbos, it's also these two dimensions of Shabbos. That if we properly channel the energy of the Friday night and the energy of the Shabbos day and experience in our soul the lower level of Shabbos and the higher level of Shabbos, that's also a reference to bringing the Geula. Yet seemingly this is not understandable. It's almost paradoxical. On the one hand, you're telling me that it's the flood waters, the waters of Noach, that destroyed a world. On the other hand, you're telling me that this is the impetus to revealing the tranquility and serenity of the soul. These two levels of Shabbos is a reference to Noach. We don't understand the whole concept of the Mabul. If it's all for the sake of removing and destroying man, the sinful mortals of the world, who occupied themselves in Hamas, in destruction, in larceny. If they were so evil, if they were so negative, why did we need such a tumultuous experience of almost like a miraculous experience of this flood? In one moment, in one flash, Hashem could cause the evil and the negativity to vanish from the world, even without a Mabul. However, in truth, there's truly an inner reason why the Mabul, and specifically a flood of water, had to come to the world. And it's for purification purposes. And when we use the terminology purification, to purify, it also means to realign, to reconnect. to recalibrate the system of creation. There was something off. Shenemar, like it says, Kimala aretz chamas v'niskalkela me'od, that the world was filled with destruction, larceny, and it was extremely v'niskalkela. It became very very destructive. Its power of normalcy dwindled. Kilkul means to say like it became spoiled. So when something spoils, you have to now either get rid of it, but the way you get rid of it is by an antidote, by a medication that purifies the air. So the air purifier of the disease, which was brought about by the negativity of these people, was the mabul. Therefore, the mabul had to come, specifically the mabul, specifically the flood, Mayim, which was exhibited by water, in order to purify and recalibrate the system of souls of the world. And this is exemplified by a mikvah, which a mikvah has 40 sa, and it sa is a measurement of liquid. I believe it's 90 gallons. 40 sa is 90 gallons of water, and that is the minimum requirement or amount of water that a mikvah, kosher mikvah, has to have in order to purify. And it's specifically this amount of 40 sa, i.e. 90 gallons of water, but the number 40 is a magical number, because that's the number that's able to purify that which is impure. Or in psychological terms, we'll say that's the number, the antidote to realign, to recalibrate the system of disconnection. So too, the Mabul came to the world in order to realign, refocus, reshift the world's paradigm. Like it's written in Yecheskel, and I threw upon them purifying waters and they became pure. And because of this we call it the waters of Noach, or i.e. the waters of tranquility, or the waters that brought serenity, that brought a naicha derucha, that brought a pleasing fragrance, a serene experience to on high and to the physical world. And therefore, this is what we say, the idea of 40 se'ah is synonymous with the 40 days that the flood actually occurred. And in those 40 days, the purification of the world, the recalibration of the world occurred. Like the 40 se'ah that causes the recalibration of a person who was tameh, who becomes tahar. The subjugation to making a living and dealing with the anxieties of finances are also called Mei Noach. They're also called the waters of tranquility. Again, it has a dual definition. On the one hand, Mei Noach, the waters of Noach, which is flood-like. It's the flood of my life that is causing me so much anxiety, so much troubles to try and make a living. On the other hand, those troubles and anxiety, if used in a healthy and proper way, can be the impetus to Mei Noach, to the waters of tranquility. Our sages say that Avram Avinu chose slavery, which again, slavery is to be subjugated to somebody else, more in contrast to Gehenna. He would have rathered slavery for a certain period of time, 400 years, 210 years, more than Gehenna. Now why? What's the analysis here? That just like a soul cannot enter into the Garden of Eden, to bask within the radiance of the divine presence, until it enters into Gehenna, which is what we say in English purgatory, a cleansing process for the soul to release itself from the dross of the physical world. As we know that the physical world and the materiality of the physical world leaches itself onto the soul, and therefore the soul needs to become purged of the dross of the physical world in order to enter into the new paradigm, what we call Gan Eden. And that process is called Gehenna. Like Like it says regarding Acher. Who's Acher? Elisha ben Abuya, who went off the path, that regarding his student Reb Meir said, Mutav delidaini v'leisi la'amad asi, it's better for him, it's befitting for him to become judged. It's worth it for him to go through the trials and tribulations of Gehenna in order to come to the future world, to the Gan Eden. V'gam litvel b'nahar dinor k'mei shekosu b'makam acher. And to toivel in this mystical river called Nahar Dinor, which is basically the transition between Gehenna and Gan Eden, as this is discussed elsewhere. So k'mei kein al yidei shibud. So just like Gehenna is this transitionary stage to cause the cleansing of the soul to go from the dross and the dregs of the materiality of this world, and it releases it and it purges it to enter into Gan Eden, so too shibud, the idea of subjugation, slavery, the slavery of Egypt also allowed us to go through this smelting pot that releases the dross from the gold and allows us to enter into the intimacy with Hashem, which is called the Torah. But Egypt was the kur habarzel, that smelting pot that allowed for that entrance into the world of Torah to occur. The notion of shibud is not only that we have a king upon us and he throws upon us the burden of taxes. Because even in the Beis Hamikdash, we had a king, a Jewish king, and we had taxes. Was a lot of money we had to pay in taxes. As it's known, that we had to give a tenth of our income towards the Beis Hamikdash, towards the king. So it's not only about giving away money. Rather, the idea is that in the times of the Beis Hamikdash was standing, we drew down such an immense level of prosperity and blessing. Like we say that the land of Israel was a land flowing with milk and honey. There was such tremendous abundance that was not within the realm of nature. There was a miraculous level of abundance. Like it says in the end of Masechta Ksubis, and there was no worries and anxiety of Parnasa, and nevertheless they had to give, there was a king and they had to give taxes. So what's this idea of shibud? It means to be a slave to yourself, to be a slave to somebody else, thinking that person is the true harbinger, the true executor of your sustenance. Every single person has issues, anxieties, problems with financial achievements. And we all have to involve ourselves in the physical world, and this is called the many waters, which is simultaneously called the waters of tranquility. So the flood-like state of my life that I'm trying to make a parnasa is simultaneously called the tranquility of my life when I realize what the purpose of me coming down into this world is. That this is a fragrant spirit, a spirit of tranquility, that through these many waters, the flood-like anxieties that I have within my mind, that I can't sleep at night because how am I going to make a living? Nevertheless, catapults the soul to a level so high that it transcends even the level of the soul as it was prior to its plummeting to this earth. Why? How can that be? Because prior to the soul's plummeting into this world, into a physical body, it was only and merely basking within a radiance of the divine presence. Our sages say, how precious, how beautiful is even one moment, 1 hour of teshuvah and good deeds in this world, more than the whole entire world to come. And it's specifically because the power and advantageousness of light stems and is emitted from dealing with darkness, dafka. That this is specifically through the bending and the disciplining of the negative forces of creation. And to transform darkness to light. That when a person is dealing all day and all night with the physical issues of his life, and trying to make a living, and scheming and creating these machinations of how he's going to make a living, that's called darkness. That's called wallowing within the shadows of darkness. Because at the end of the day, what's the true target? Is that our parnasa comes from Hashem, and the strengthening and the bitachon in that, and realizing how codependent we are to Hashem's cradling of us, similar to the mun in the desert, that if we would try and keep extra, it would wither, it would spoil. So that's a modern day look at how we make a living. As we know, the famous story of the Baal Shem Tov, that he would, as much money as he would make in a day, he would do his best to try and not come home with any coins. Why? He would tell his chassidim, because I want that whatever Hashem produced for me today will be reproduced tomorrow. The only way I can have that is by that I start off with nothing. If I start off with nothing, then I can allow for the full hand of Hashem to bloom and to manifest. So this preoccupation of dealing with the living is called choshech. But again, what's the maila is that we have that in the davening of this world, and when we think about it, we contemplate that there's not even one blade of grass that doesn't have some type of spiritual system or zodiac that is causing it to grow from above. Shema mazal, these are the constellations, the stars, the zodiacs, Shema mashpiyim chayus kolei lamazeh, that are bequeathing vitality and energy to the physical world. Like it's written in Varim, in that from the influence of the sun causes the produce to grow, and from the influence of the moon causes the bounty of various produce as well. And the constellations and the stars that are causing the physicality, the material of the world to grow, are recipients from the 70 ministers, the 70 celestial ministers, which are really the 70 archangels of each nation of the world. The asarim, and these archangels, these ministers that are constantly bequeathing energy to the physicality, materiality of the world, which is really to the sun, moon, and stars that then precipitate into the physical world, they are also merely and only recipients. They are receiving from the dregs, the sweat, the leftovers of the lowest level of the angels called Ifanim. And the Ifanim, the lower level of the angels, are Mekablim HaMalachim, that they receive from a higher level of angel. And each one it's a whole hishtalshalus, a whole chain reaction of worlds of who's receiving from who. Until we reach that the primary recipient is from the level of Malchus of Hashem. What's the level of Malchus? Hashem's nobility, Hashem's kingship, Hashem's power of speech and communication of divine energy and flow into the world. That your kingship is the kingship of all worlds, which means to say your power of communication, speech, and bounty is only through the recipient of Malchus, which becomes the energy of the whole entire creation. That Malchus is impregnated, so to speak, with this power of divine influence, and it gestates spiritually, and it gives birth spiritually, and then it precipitates lower and lower until it reaches a physical form. That in truth, from this level of Malchus, the world was created from non-existence into existence, from non-being to beingness, literally. And nevertheless, the yesh, the ego, the beingness of the world that came from non-existence is only and merely a refraction and a reflection of the radiance of the divine presence. And that refraction and reflection is only a mere sliver of of the truth of godliness, bilvad. Relative to legabe mehus v'atzmusi, relative to the essence and being of godliness, Yisbarach, blessed be He. Kiviyachol, so to speak, shu b'bechinas ein sof mamish. That He is literally the infinite light of Hashem, and the infinite light cannot be relegated or limited or restricted to the confines of the physical world. And we're speaking about a level of God that is so sublime that it's haya hoy v'viyeh bli shinui mamish. That He's past, present, and future simultaneously without any vicissitudes or changes whatsoever. And as we declare, you are the same God prior to creation, as well as the same God subsequent to creation. Creation had no bearing on the essence of God. And all of this is the preoccupation of the neshama as it is in the body, as we're trying to recalibrate our system called davening. Davening is the mechanism to try and soften the intensity, the judgment, the anxiety of the parnas of this physical world. So when we're trying to reconnect and reattach ourselves through this meditation and prayer, once we've meditated and deeply connected to these ideas, what will happen? The heart and soul of the Jew will be motivated and excited and inspired. It will be awakened with a tremendous level of yearning, craving, and longing, like fiery coals, that want to just strip themselves away from the sheath of darkness of this physical world. And our only preoccupation becomes to cleave to Hashem. Like it's written in Tilim, David HaMelech says, who is for me in the heavens, and with you I do not desire to be on earth. Why? That there's no desire that is consequential enough to cause the true stirring and yearning of the soul other than being with Hashem Himself. That we are not stirred by the lower levels of Gan Eden. We are not stirred by the higher levels of Gan Eden. Nothing inspires us. Nothing awakens us. Why not? Because the contemplation is so deep that we realize that they are only and merely glimmers and radiances of the true and refractions of the true light or luminary of God Himself. Our sages say that the tzaddikim are sitting and basking within the rays of the Shekhinah. That even the tzaddikim who are basking in the radiance of the Shekhinah, it's only the radiance of the Shekhinah. And so therefore, where can the true manifestation of God's essence be? Is specifically not limited or relegated to the higher world. It specifically manifests in this physical world. And therefore, in this physical world, we become because in this physical world, we realize that even the highest levels of godliness and spirituality are absolutely eclipsed by the essence and being of Hashem. This meditation, as it's qualified in the Zohar, is called that we become melted away within the body of the King. We become subsumed within the divine reality called Hashem. This level of ava, this level of love that is stirred and conjured through the contemplation of davening, of how we realize that not only the physical world is not even a refraction and a glimmer of the higher world, but even the higher worlds, the spiritual bounty and benevolence is only a glimmer, as we said before, that the materiality of this world is generated by the influence of the sun, moon, stars, zodiacs, constellations, and their influences by the 70 ministers, and the 70 ministers or archangels are receiving from the lowest level of angels and higher. All of that is a mere precipitation and a dreg of a kernel of the truth of where the soul is truly coming from, and even that is a kernel of what we can experience in this physical world. And this is what remotivates, reignites the spark, the flame. This love is called b'chinas teshuvah. That's called teshuvah. We know teshuvah, the power of return, Or we'll really say the power of retrieving oneself from exile, from a state of bewilderment, is called a Baal Teshuvah. That the Baal Teshuvah is on a much higher degree. But it specifically had to come through the concealment and the darkness and the hiddenness of this world. Because for a period of time, we were preoccupied with the vanities and physicality of this world. And the reason why the mechanism is specifically through the darkness is because that's how you'll value the true light, and the luminary is able to be accessed. Not just light itself, but the luminary itself. And this love that is, again, generated through the process of prayer, and we contemplate how we're so one with Hashem, specifically in the darkness, in the physical world, and going through the issues of Parnasa and trying to make a living. This level of love, which is now synonymous with the level of Teshuvah, this is what we experience in Shema every day, called Bechinas Bechol Me'oidecha. I love that you should love Hashem with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might, your money, your everything, everything means to say Me'oid, from the Adam and Me'oid have the same letters. Adam is the configuration of man, the structure, the rationale, the emotions, and the feet, the head, torso, and feet and legs. But Me'oid is a transposing of those letters, and we reach a level of the Baal Tshuva, which is even higher than the Tzaddik. And that's specifically that the darkness itself shines. That we use darkness as a mechanism to retrieve the luminary and not just the light. That this is literally uncontainable levels of love. That specifically comes from the opposite, which is called the darkness. Like it's written, when it says, when Hashem says he saw the light and it was good, that's a reference, or he saw the day and it was good, that's a reference to the angel that gives life. When it says toiv me'oid, me'oid is a reference to Malach HaMavis, the angel that gives the opposite of life. That it's specifically to the opposite of light and the opposite of goodness and darkness, that this is also synonymous with the animal soul. That we come, that this is a catalyst to a level of the soul called you should love Hashem with all your everything. With all your everything implies with all your boundlessness. That this is the boundlessness of the soul, the unrestrictableness of the soul. And how is this possible? What did we do to merit this? It's because the truth is that the animal soul really stems from a deeper place than the godly soul. Like it's written, and these are the kings that ruled prior to the kings of the Jewish people. This is a reference to the chieftains of Esav. But the fact that it says that they ruled prior to the rulership of the Jewish people is a Kabbalistic reference to how the animal soul ruled, so to speak, that Esav's place of birth, which is the firstborn, rules, so to speak, before Yaakov, before the godly soul. It's only through the Kabbalistic idea of the breaking of the vessels, naflu lemata mata, that the shards of the source of the animal soul became broken to the point that it became scattered into the physical world. Like it's written, and a reference is again a reference to the chieftains of Esav, that they ruled and they died. They ruled and they died. This is a reference to the rulership and the prominence of the animal soul preceding the godly soul, and nevertheless passing away, meaning to say there was a shvira, there was a breaking in those vessels, in that light. But in truth, in their source, in the roots, the animal soul is higher, meaning to say it has the capacity for greater spiritual sensitivity than even the godly soul. Why? Because at the end of the day, the godly soul is limited and relegated to a realm of righteousness. And therefore, it's limited to a realm, as we discussed last week, called Or Yashar, the straight light of Hashem. Whereas the animal soul is in constant state of rebound. He's trying to rebound himself from Klipa, from Sitra Achra. And when he does that, that itself surmounts over the godly soul, and he reaches back into his roots, which preceded the godly soul. And therefore, what's the proof that the animal soul precedes the godly soul and has capacity for greater spiritual sensitivity to the point that it's me'oid, it's a level of teshuvah, the ava, that is the experience of teshuvah, which is higher than the tzaddik, is because the animal, in general, animals are stronger, are more brute, are more intense than people. And this is a euphemism of how the animal soul is more intense or stronger than the godly soul. Because the nature of the animal soul is to rule. It has that kingship, has that nobility, and has that aloofness. To the point that we see that a human being can only live his life when he benefits from animals and from food. And without the animal products or herbage, things that people eat, we can't live. The food doesn't need the person. The person needs the food. You are what you eat. Not what you eat becomes, well, it does become you, but it's. And this is due to the fact that there's a godly radiance and spark stemming from the animal soul, which is much greater, much more transcendent than the godly soul, and it's now embedded, that spark of that is embedded in the physical things of our life called food. And therefore, as the godly soul plummets and becomes enclosed in the animal soul, to now become preoccupied with the anxieties and troubles of making a parnas and dealing with the physical things, Mayim Rabbim, that these are called the many waters, the abundant raging waters that confuse us and bewilder us and don't allow us to connect to Hashem. Seemingly, it's specifically through that mechanism of the raging waters that attempts to snuff out the ignition, the fire of our soul, that this is all an impetus to leading to a love with all your everything, with a boundless level of love. As we said, synonymous with level of teshuvah, of retrieving back to a level of toyu, which is higher than tikkun, the lights of insanity, the lights of chaos, which precede the vessels of order. Shehu bli gvul kanal. That this is an expression of the true infinity of Hashem. That this is a level that is totally higher and spiritually sensitive than when it was prior to coming to a body. As we said before, that the level of tzaddikim or yashar are only basking in a radiance of the Shekhinah, and is not as palpable of a level of godliness as it is manifest in this physical world. But this is only the revelation of this experience is only through a subduing and a transforming of the darkness into light. That this is only through the appreciation of how light stems from darkness, but the darkness itself has to be bent, has to be unsheathed. How does it have such a power? How does it have such a level? Is because in truth its origin and its sources and its roots stem from an even greater level than godly soul. It's only that it plummeted so deep and so low that it enters into the pits of this world. Like we said, the reference to this is Vayimlech Vayamais, and the chieftains of Esav ruled and they died. They ruled and they died. However, through the bending and the subduing of the animal soul, we make a resurrection, a revival of the dead, i.e. a revival of the dead light, of the sparks that became limited and encumbered by the physicality of this world. We're mechayamesim them specifically through revealing how in truth they are even more connected to the luminary than the light of tzaddikim themselves. We'll stop here.